Hello everyone and welcome to Purple Curtain Podcast. This is John.
This is Rusty.
And it's been a long time since our previous episode for various reasons, but I was reading something on Twitter that I was interested in, and we decided to do
Mm-hmm.
a new episode based on that. And the thing what I was reading about is that when Inoue Sairi announced her graduation, there were lots of people
Mm-hmm.
making comments along the lines of, this is the end of first gen. And I thought it was
Mm.
an interesting perspective to look at because it's not people saying this is the end of the group, but it's people, quite a lot of different people all at the same time saying that this is the end of first gen's period when it comes to the group. And I thought that was quite an interesting thing to look at.
Mm. Yeah, it is. I think up until now, the first gen has been very much been the face of the group, like the core member. Even though there's been like 3 new extra generation now, I think the most identifiable member, the most prominent member, have always been members from the first generation, and maybe starting from this point onward, that will slowly change.
Yeah, because I think that if you look at the members who we kind of expect to be in the group for a long time, it's members who we expect to be in the group rather than just hope will be in the group. I would say that we've got Manatsu because Manatsu has been made captain, so you would assume that management talked to her about her plans for the near future. There's also Asuka and Minami because they were
Mm-hmm.
considerably younger than the other members of the group and they're still popular. There's popular
Mm-hmm.
members like Ika-chan and Mayan and Kaz and Matsun, and I think we all hope that they're in the group for a while left to come, but, the reality is that because of their age, that might not be possible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also members like Maya and Kanarin, who I think are, bringing something to the group, but because their potential activities have been stifled, especially with fourth gen coming in, I'm not sure how long they'll be around. So we are looking at a situation in the near future where first generation might actually be pared down to only 3 members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see. I mean, a lot of people been talking about this forever, and it never happens. So maybe I'm just being like that again. But I can see my graduating soon. I think if she wants to, she can graduate this very next single if she wants, and it would make sense. She have a movie coming up, and she's still doing well when it comes to modeling. So there's a lot of like jobs she can do post graduation. But yeah, like we discussed this before, right? Ma Yang seems to like being in the group a lot,
Yeah,
so maybe that's why she's sticking around. But it's totally possible that she will graduate soon, and I think that would truly beacon the first gen as the most prominent face of the group because well, Ma Yang is such a iconic and vital member to the group.
yeah. I think, there's one perspective to look at here. There's the fact that the numbers of first gen are dwindling, but there's also the fact
Mm-hmm.
that with the numbers of first gen dwindling and second gen's opportunities still being restricted, the boundary between the two groups is starting to break down because as these groups become smaller, they end up in the
Mm-hmm.
situation of just being the senior members of the group. Not just first
Mm-hmm.
gen and second gen, but together the together they become the senior members that the younger members are relying on. But increasingly, it looks as though the younger members might actually make up the group, the bulk of both the group and the senbatsu as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, recently we've been seeing a lot of pairing that have been happening when they go on variety show, for example,
Yeah.
and we usually see like one of the senior members or paired with one of the younger members. So for example, we saw Mazun and Kaki, for example,
Mm.
and it feels like a mentor and a trainee, and Mazun is very good at variety, so she can kind of help out Kaki, pass off some experience, and help her out when she needs some help on the show. So I feel like dynamics happening, and it's definitely not just something we're observing, but something um that's that's happening.
Yeah, so we're not just looking at a change in the group dynamics, we are looking at a reality where one phase of the group's history looks like it's ending, and it really looks like a new one genuinely is beginning. Where these new faces will be the faces of the group, probably along with.
Hmm.
I think Asuka probably will remain as a regular center for
Hmm.
quite a long time to come.
Hmm.
Um, she still seems to be quite settled in the group. I know it's been quite a long
Hmm.
time for her, but I think that she is going to take the opportunity that's been given to her to be, the main face of the group for some period of time.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I
beyond that,
think.
I think we're going to look at a situation where the third and fourth gens will be the most recognisable active members of the group within
Hmm.
quite a short time frame from now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think Asuka's quite enjoying her time in Nogi, and she's not gonna graduate anytime soon. There's doesn't seem to be any reason for her to like compare her to Ma Yang, for example,
Yeah,
or Ikujiang even.
because Maya and Ikashan have both, obviously, they've been in the group for the same length of time that Asuka has.
Hmm.
But Asuka is someone who, because she's younger, she hasn't got to a point in her life where she needs to move on, even if she's got to a point in her career where she could move on.
Hmm. Yeah. I also think relative to Ma Yang and Ikujiang, it's not as obvious what she can do if she should graduate right now.
Yeah.
Like for Ma Yang, she's currently doing a bit of acting and she have a very established modeling career. Ikujiang's doing musical all day, all night. We know that very well. So they can graduate and just focus on those jobs, but I don't think that's as clear for Asuka. So
Yeah. I
there's
think
not as much reason for her to graduate right now.
I think that Asuka's profile is quite good. Asuka
Hmm.
is fairly recognizable, but Ika-chan has a identifiable alternative career in musicals, and so
Hmm.
does Mayan. Whereas even
Hmm.
though Asuka's public profile is quite good, which would
Hmm.
be a good thing for her continued career, it's less obvious that she has a career path lined up.
Hmm.
So yeah, you're absolutely right there.
Yeah. And there's another interesting dynamic that I would like to bring up when you're talking about the first gen and second gen brewing.
Yeah.
That is that as the more prominent and popular member graduate, a lot of the member that feels like they might be sticking around longer are actually more like members that have been in unders more. So for example, Kana and Higuchi and Maya, for example, they spend more time in unders than in Senbatsu. And most of the second gen are unders regular, so they're already more familiar. Whereas if it's Maya, for example, she's not nearly as close with, let's just say, Juna, for example. They don't got to spend as much time together as Kana and Juna, for example.
Yeah.
So besides the fact that the generation is brewing because of seniority, it's also brewing because the first gen that are more likely to remain is looking more and more like people who have spent extended time with second gen.
Yeah, and I think this also raises two questions. There's the long running question of, what do second gen do when there's members coming into the group and
Mm.
second gen members still can't get into Senbatsu. There are spaces
Mm-hmm.
opening up, but they're not going to second gen. So
Mm.
there's the question of, how does second gen feel about that? But there's also the question of what's happening in terms of second gen's relation with the newer members coming in. Because
Mm.
if you look at it, second gen, with some members, like thinking of in particular Junna, Renachi, and Midia, all actually seem to be fairly close with the gens below them in
Mm-hmm.
a sort of mentor-like role. So, obviously we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, but I think it's possible that some of these second gen members have been asked to stay on because they do actually have quite an
Mm.
important role to play in terms of not just developing third and fourth gens, but in particular developing the third and fourth gens who are less prominent but probably will
Mm.
still play an important role in the group going forward, as potential undergirl centres, as
Mm-hmm.
members who could substitute in during TV appearances.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. Like for a lot of second gen, they're just talking about their about and rising to proper conventional sense, like within the group, within the fandom. It's looking very much unlikely for a lot of them right now. So it's possible that they are being asked to stay on to play a mentorship role to their younger gen. And I think for a few of them, things are just fine the way they are. So for example, Juna, she do get jobs. She's doing quite a few musical roles, and she's pretty good at those roles, and she don't need to. You can still balance it between the group because she doesn't get much in the group to be fair, but she can balance it between being in the group and doing her musical career outside. And for example, Nachi, she has that Kusama thing that's very regular for her,
Yeah,
and once again, she doesn't have a regular, like she doesn't have too much on her plate within the group, so she can easily balance going on her variety shows and being in the group. So I think for a lot of these second gen member, although it's not that ideal when it comes to like conventional popularity within the fandom, they're doing decently with like outside fandom jobs, and it's sustaining them, and they don't need to move on if they don't desire so.
yeah, and I think that in particular, if you look at Junna, that is quite. I think she's very symptomatic of the type of members who could graduate from Nogizaka if they wanted to, but haven't graduated because they don't want to. For whatever reason is their own. But Junna could actually graduate tomorrow and still have a career and something that she could make her living off. So it's obviously a very conscious choice that she's stayed in Nogizaka because she
Mm-hmm.
wants to, rather than because she needs to, like for work or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I
I agree.
and I think that does say something very positive about the atmosphere within the group itself and what the members are getting out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I have a question in mind, and I don't know if you have any answer to that. I personally have some. Like, do you see any potential for a second gen to break out, like to rise in popularity and maybe be competitive with the younger gen? I think the only two exceptions to that question is Miona and Maijun because they're already kind of up there and fairly steady, and especially Miona, she's fairly favored by management, and my tune also got a few rather stable jobs like in Nogizaka and in some other gigs, so those two are steady up there. But for the rest of second gen, they're not quite there. Their resources are relatively relatively lower compared to their new gen and the first gen powerhouse. But fairly young, specifically Media, Nanze, Ayane. Do you think they have a chance to like break
Um,
out?
I think that Ayane is the only one who does, and I say that
Mm.
because Ayane's already crossed over several times. You know, she's got into Senbatsu several times.
That's true.
So there's that, and there's also the fact that there are, because there are spaces opening up, I don't expect them to go to the other second gens because, you know, I feel as though the prejudice against having second gens in Zenbatsu has always been there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, you know, I'd like it to go away, but I don't expect it to go away.
Mm.
But Ayane has already managed to get over that barrier without the added bonus of spaces opening up within the Senbatsu because people have graduated. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's actually not unrealistic to think that that might happen specifically for Ayane, but I think sadly not for any of the other members.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a fair analysis. Ayane also have a lot of quirky interests, I guess. Like, she likes Gundam a lot. She like playing. She also like those march music from like centuries ago. She have a lot of quirky interests, and I think those open up potential opportunities. And whenever those open up, there's a small chance she would get more popular. So yeah, I agree. It's looking like the potential for that is she probably had the highest potential for that, and it's a lot less likely for anyone else in second gen.
I mean, my personal opinion is that the number of second gen members who haven't appeared in a Senbatsu now is low enough that I really think that they all should get at least one turn in the back row before they graduate because I feel like it's quite unfair for them not to. But it
Mm-hmm.
does feel as though this is the kind of thing where I'm probably just going to be frustrated by the actual results once they've all left the group.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, like, I think, like, you know, like, I think all the members who haven't appeared yet, all, you know, they should all have a go, but my kind of feeling is that because they've been so neglected, I can't see management doing that, even though it's quite a small gesture, really.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think it's actually unless like a large.
You know, and it's kind of frustrating because I feel like it is quite a small thing because, you know, you can leave third and fourth gen members out for one single and it won't do their career any harm, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, more popular members have been left out
Yeah,
for.
and there's only like that's true. And there's not a lot of second gen that haven't been in Senbatsu left. Like I think there's three right now, right? It's like Juna and Protocol and um Nachi, right?
Yeah, but I'll just check this, but
Maybe
yeah, because
maybe I've been
Rans
in
has been
Senbatsu
in
before,
two
right?
singles, Midia's been in one single. So
Yeah.
it's not really. I mean, you know, like there have been, you know, prominent members who sat out one single and it hasn't really affected them that
Mhm.
much. And I'm only talking about the background, but
Yeah.
even so, you know, I feel like if I was in a room with management right now, I'd be able to convince them of this, but um, it kind of doesn't really matter what I think, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Should we talk about the image, their possible Senbatsu image from the Nobichu show?
Yeah, the image we're talking about is there was like a picture posted. Was it posted by Nogichi's Twitter account? Because I'm looking
I'm
at it
not
and
sure if it's
it's got like the official Nogichu copyright mark in the bottom right hand corner. So
yeah.
I'm not
I
quite
mean
sure where it's
it's
come from, but it is an official image they put out.
it's either from their Twitter or from their official site, and maybe it's taken down now because it's posted too early. But
Yeah,
it's definitely official because it looks official. There's no way you're photoshopping that.
yeah.
But yeah,
So
it got 18 members.
Yeah, so the
And
photo is of Banana Man with 18 members, and if people aren't familiar with the picture, I'm just going to list up, like, the members are Asuka, Ika-chan, Miona, Kaz, Mayan, Manatsu, Minimin, Sakura, Saya, Sayaka, Kaki, Ki-chan, Kuboshi, Mai-chan, Ayame, Minami, Zuki, and Yoda. So,
mhm,
like, this is bringing up a couple of interesting questions here, because there's quite a lot of fourth gens in there,
mhm,
including Saya and Sayaka, who I think aren't massively popular, so their being there is quite interesting, because it means there must be a concerted decision to bring in as many fourth gens as possible.
mhm,
And there's also it's also missing Matsun and Momoko, so um, they could actually have been planned to be in this Senbatsu if this is the Senbatsu, and they just weren't available on the day the photo was taken.
mhm.
And a 20-member
I think
Senbatsu
that's
wouldn't
really
be particularly
likely.
big.
True. Although there were 21 members in Battle before, so for all we know, there might be one extra member.
Yeah,
That's the Battle. Yeah. Yeah, and like Momoko, I can see her not being in Senbatsu. I can see her being in unders, although I think it's more likely she'd be in the definitely is in unders. Matsun's definitely going to be in Senbatsu. So if this is truly like all these are Senbatsu members, then Matsun's definitely away, and there's definitely more than 18 members in Senbatsu.
yeah, because I think there is one possibility, which is that it's just the image for the show for whichever group of episodes they're
Day.
recording. But
Yeah.
I would say that in that case, there's people you'd expect to be there, like like Maya is pretty much always on Nogichu as a guest, even when she's not in Senbatsu, because Maya is just very, very entertaining.
Mhm.
I'd also say
Yeah.
I'm, less surprised than Momoko, but um, management likes Den-chan a lot, and she's not there. And they
Mm,
also like Rentan, and she's not there.
true.
Um,
Although I do think their popularity is not quite there, so I can see them not making
yeah,
Senbatsu quite easily. Also, back to Saya and Sayaka, although I would say not the most popular fourth gen, they are, especially Sayaka, I think she's decently so, and I definitely think these two members, especially if you look at their fourth gen songs MV in the single where both Sayaka and Saya plays a prominent role in the MV.
yeah.
So you can definitely tell imagine like those two, and since their popularity is decent, I can see them pushing them on to Senbatsu. So, like, this image makes sense. It makes sense if this is Senbatsu members in this image.
I also think, there's a couple of other interesting things that I'd like to say about this, which is that, firstly, that Sakura is the only fourth gen in the front row, because there's, like
Mm,
there's two rows of members here. So Sakura is the only fourth gen in the front row. Kaki is not in the front row, which is interesting, because Kaki has been, I think, actually pushed almost as hard as Sayaka has been. She wasn't made the center, but if you just kind of look at the number of times she's like showed up on things or been referenced, she's
or on Twitter. Yeah.
yeah, no, by the group themselves.
Oh, no, I mean the group Twitter. Like, there was a
Oh
while where
yeah, that's right. Sorry,
yeah,
but
Kaki was like
but
being treated every half second.
but any time fourth gen has appeared, Sakura and Kaki have always been there. And Ayame's there most of the time, but she's not always there.
Mhm.
And the other thing I think is quite interesting is that the only third gen in the front row is Minimin. So not
Mm.
Zuki or Yoda, but just Minimin being there. And I think that's quite interesting as well,
Hmm.
because I always thought that of the third gen members who always sold out their handshake slots, I got the impression that Minimum was management's least favourite.
Yeah,
So like
I
favourite being Yoda, then Zuki, then Kuboshi, and then Miniman.
agree. The top five for Gem Seller is like I mean, being higher than Momoko, but Matchman definitely. I think that you can barely say that like Minami leads up to five,
Yeah,
followed by Kubo. So it's really interesting to see her in the front row. Although maybe they're warming up to her these days. I don't know. I can see that happening. Although among the top five, the impression I'm getting is that they are liking Mizuki more these days. So
yeah.
like you respect Mizuki and Minami to switch position. I'm a bit less surprised to see Sakura there though, because like if I'm management and I have to pick one fourth gen to stay in the front row, it's probably Sakura. I mean, they made her center, right?
Oh yeah. I
And
mean, I'm not surprised that Sakura's there. I'm just more, you know, I just find it more interesting that Sakura is the only one they've chosen to be there.
mm, yeah,
But
that makes
like
sense.
Sakura, I think is. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't actually looked at handshake data that much for fourth gen specifically. So, but I get the impression that Sakura is as popular with fans as management want her to be.
Mm, I think so. Way back when fourth gen first appeared, remember hearing talk about her being the most popular in the fourth gen event, the debut event, where
Yeah.
they kind of introduce themselves. And since then, their handshake been pretty good. I'm not sure is there a very clear hierarchy between her and Kaki and Ayame, but the two of them pretty much sell out. So they're you can safely say they're very popular. Um, so yeah, I can see management just choosing her in the front row over Kaki, though. Yeah, Kaki is also very popular for sure.
So the other thing is, this picture, it's got Banana Man in the center, and
Hmm.
to the left is Kaz, and to the right is Mayan. Now, I think it would be pretty surprising if we got a Kaz and Mayan double center. I think that would be quite a quite an out there choice. I mean, my
Mm,
guess is probably still that, um, I've kind of guessed that Asuka will be center pretty much for the last year and a half or so whenever a new single comes out. And I
hmm
see no reason to change my guess now.
hmm
Um, but I think that leads us on to another topic, which is that, we've only had two singles so far this year, which
hmm
is unusual because, Nogizaka has always had three, at least, since they
hmm
debut. I think Nogizaka has had three singles a year, except for their debut year when they had four.
You're correct.
Right. So if there was no third single this year, that would be quite unusual. Although
Hmm
I think there's a couple of points here. The first point is that with Hinata Zaka coming in, it does feel as though the Zaka resources have been stretched quite a bit, because as far as I understand it, Kayaki Zaka has only had one single this year, haven't they?
Yeah, it seems like it.
Yeah,
Although are they releasing a second one right now?
I don't know.
I'm not too sure.
I don't know, but it
Yeah.
does make me wonder if there is now the resources for there to be three singles a year for every one of those three groups.
Hmm.
We might also
Yeah.
see a very late single, like we might see a single right up in December, which
hmm
would I think be quite unusual. But usually I kind of think that there's an October or November single but that probably
Hmm.
would have been announced by now if it was going to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, if there is going to be a December single, the announcement should be like it feels like it should be roughly around now. Now though, they already showed the next episode preview for Nogi 2, and the next episodes they're still doing their summer homework thing. So
Hmm.
the soonest we will get a preview from Nogi 2 will be the week after the next one. So it will be a bit tight, but it there has been like 3 month gap between singles before. 3 month gap is not that uncommon. In fact, there have been a lot of longer gap, but there also been as short as a 2 month gap before. The 2 month gap is between Nigemizu, which is the virgin centered single, and Itsuka, the one where Asuka and Nase centering.
Yeah.
So a 2 month gap happened before, so a 3 month gap is definitely possible. But yeah, we haven't had any announcement of that yet. So maybe my guess is early next year.
Yeah, so if we don't get one, I think this also leads into there were two main things that I wanted to talk about. The first thing was the issue of first gen, their era ending, and the other thing is Yoake's single sales were, I think, weaker than a previous single, weren't they? And
That's true.
I think we've also hit a point where, for most of Nogizaka's history, their sales have been going up continuously.
Mm.
Sometimes not by that much, sometimes by quite large numbers.
Hmm.
But it feels as though, basically since about the beginning of 2018, that rise has plateaued, and we're now at a stage where Nogizaka is selling probably about as many singles as it ever will do. It
Mm.
kind of feels as though the numbers won't ever really get any higher than they are now. Um,
Yeah.
Now,
Hmm.
this kind of goes back a little bit to what we talked about when Vince was guesting, which is that idol girl groups just kind of aren't as popular as they used to be.
Hmm.
So even if you're the top idol group, you still won't be selling as much as AKB was selling at the height of their popularity.
Hmm.
So, if we're living in a situation where Nogizaka have peaked and they've become as popular as they ever will be, that's, from my perspective, that's not a problem. Like they're very successful. They're still selling out all their events. It's not really a problem. But,
Hmm.
the reality might be that third and fourth gen's big challenge might not be to make Nogizaka any more popular than they were, but just to maintain the popularity they've got now.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I think it's earlier than 2019. In fact, I think it's like roughly since 2018. Nogi plateaued. I think our highest
Did I
first
say
week gap.
2019? I meant 2018, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, our highest first week sale was from Synchronicity, and even if you discount that because it's a Mayan center and Mayan center might have some extra bonus sales, it's roughly plateaued. Definitely since the analysis and goal is been around the high 900,000 to like the low millions, and I think that sounds about right for a physical limit. Like Noki will only ever have so much member doing handshake. We are never going to have like the AKB system where
Yeah.
all the sister group are also doing handshake for their mothership. That's never going to happen here.
Yeah,
So
this is something that we've talked about it on the podcast before, but it
yeah,
does bear reiterating, which is that when Nogizaka members have been in the group for certain period of time and have sold out a certain number of handshake slots, they no longer have to do individual handshakes. And
yes.
most physical CD sales, well, most might be a bit of a stretch, but a large number of physical CD sales are driven by the fact that people want to get handshake tickets. And
Yeah.
if the number of members being there is restricted, it means that the number of people buying physical CDs for that purpose will be restricted. And we don't know how many people listen to Nogizaka on Spotify. No, Nogizaka's not on Spotify, are they? Or are they now?
I mean, they're on Spotify.
They are on Spotify.
But yeah, they're probably on some other stuff too. But they're definitely on Spotify. Although their release is always a little bit delayed, but it's not too big of a deal. It's only a
Yeah.
few days. Yeah.
But people who aren't actually bothering to buy physical copies of CDs, we can't trace those numbers, so we don't know how many people are actually listening to the singles that are put out, really. But it means that
Yeah.
because the number of members doing handshakes is restricted, it means that the number of probable CD singles is also restricted, unless it's a super smash hit, which I actually kind of feel Synchronicity actually was, which is why it sold better than the singles we've had in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think Synchronicity was their second best hit. I say second best because I feel like Influencer got more
Yeah, because
notice.
I think Influencer was a very good single for like actually penetrating the public awareness.
Yeah, like it still wasn't their smash hit of like I don't know KFC or like Lemon or those mainstream popular songs that blow up all around the world, but it was relatively a hit for Noki standard, and yeah, I say those two were the most successful one. But unless we have something that exceeds those two single when it comes to public penetration, we probably won't see a single that blows up. And I think roughly we'll see sell around what we have right now, maybe a bit lower, but roughly this level.
I mean, basically, I think that in order to push CD sales higher than they are right now, what the group needs is just a musically outstanding single. Like, I think, a lot of promotion was put into Sing Out, but promotion alone wasn't enough to make that a sort of like comparative hit in sales terms.
True.
Whereas like Synchronicity sold very well because I think it was a really, really good song, and I think we're going to need a really, really good song for sales to be significantly higher than they are right now.
Yeah, I think Synchronicity was a good song, but I also think it being centered by Mayan helped a lot, since I think Mayan is by far the most recognizable and like when it comes to public sphere, the most followed member of Noki. So that brings me to another question in my mind, that is, can anyone in third gen or fourth gen reach like Mayan's level when it comes to the public consciousness? Because if Synchronicity cell was significantly helped by Mayan being the center of it, then potentially in the future, if we have a third gen or a fourth gen that is as iconic and impactful a member as Mayan, they can boost the cell upward by 100k, 200k, and the plateau will go up a bit, and then before like stabilizing again. Like potentially that can happen, but it's really hard to do that. Like it's really hard to be that big.
I think it's something that I think it's something that management would never be able to consciously create. Because Mayan was never management's choice for center. She just became very popular through her own personality and sort of, willpower and kind of desire to put herself out there. So if one of the third or fourth gens have that, I think it's early enough that we wouldn't really be able to tell. One of them might have that ability, but it's something which is going to have to come from the member themselves. I don't think management will ever actually be able to consciously plan that.
Is there anyone that you think would be a potential stock that will happen? That will see some development like that?
Um, I actually think, realistically speaking, because she's already got the push, I'd say that there's two people. I think Zuki has that ability
Mm.
if management ever backs her up, which they might not do because, to a certain extent, I do kind of appreciate the fact that members like Sakura, Yoda, and Momoko actually fit what they're going for a bit better than Zuki does.
Mm.
The other
Mm-hmm.
thing is, like, what's Zuki gonna do which makes her famous? Because I feel like she has the potential to do things like
Mm-hmm.
modeling, but I don't know whether she actually will do that.
Mm.
And like Mizuki's been, I think the thing that she might potentially be able to do is Mizuki's been on TV, and while the kind of shows she's been in haven't been all that great, I think that she's quite a sort of, she's a kind of like performer that draws your gaze.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Plus, like, I also think that Sakura does actually have that kind of idol factor to her.
Mm.
Again, I'm not sure what it'll actually be that would make Sakura popular,
Mm.
but I think that if she can find work outside of Nogizaka that she can, that agrees with her, Sakura does actually
Mm-hmm.
have the potential to be quite popular.
Mm. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. For me, I think one of the new agenda I think might have the off chance potential of blowing up. This might be a little bit surprising. Is Kaki,
Yeah,
and Kaki, I think there's two sides to it. First is that I think she's doing decently well on the variety shows. Like I mentioned that Matsune and Kaki is getting paired quite a bit these days, and they go on shows here and there. And Matsu's obviously very good at variety show. I think she should definitely go on primetime variety show a lot more than she currently is right now.
yeah,
But I think Kaki's doing well, especially considering that she's relatively new and this is like these are new experience for her, and she did decently. So I think she can, if she get pushed into these show a bit more and she perform well, she have an off chance of gaining more recognition. The second thing is that I haven't exactly seen her act yet, but she shouldn't be too bad since she did really well in the fourth gen principal musical thing. She's a decent singer, as we can see from that Hakumai Sama with Ikujiang chosen for subunit for their summer performance. But also she looked like a lot of top actresses in Japan apparently. Like the most common comparison is between her and Arimura. She does look very much like Arimura in my opinion. Sometimes people say she look like Toda Erika, and that depends on angle. But I saw it sometimes, like from a few angles, she does look like Toda. And then there are people that think she look like Gaki, which I don't see, but there's a few comments like that, so it's not like isolated sentiment. And Gaki is like the most popular actress in Japan right now. I mean, the other two are also very popular, so the fact that people see these top actresses based in her, I don't know, maybe that can blow up. Maybe if she ever get an opportunity to go and do some acting in some primetime drama, even if it's like not the most significant role, there's an off chance that people be like, hey, this person looked like this actress, who is she? And if she perform well, that might be helpful for her.
yeah. So, talking about Kaki, I think like, you raised something that I hadn't really considered, which is that if you want to be a popular idol, there are kind of two routes that you can go down. And the first
Mm-hmm.
route, which is the one we were talking about with, like doing acting work and modelling, is the kind of route that people like, like Achan have gone down.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've sort of found an alternative career outside outside of the idol world and pursued it.
Mhm.
But Kaki, I think, you've raised an interesting point, which is that Kaki goes on TV shows as herself, and she's done well as herself, as a kind of
Mm.
idol personality, and that reminds me quite a lot of Sashi,
Mm.
um, which, I think while the kind of drama advertising modelling route is the one that most successful idols will go down, there is that
Mhm.
alternate route. If you're good enough on TV and get asked on TV shows enough, you can actually penetrate the popular imagination that way.
Mhm.
And Kaki has already shown something quite interesting, which is that Kaki definitely, when they debuted, was definitely not the most eye-catching member
Mhm.
for most people. Yet, she's become popular at Handshake, hasn't she?
Yeah, I think she's actually the one member that's sold out in first round, like the
Yeah.
only one.
So Kaki has shown that she's got the ability to go from being a member who wasn't rated that highly by people immediately, but she's won a lot of fans in a very
Mhm.
short period of time, and I think that's something you also see reflected on my Twitter timelines in both English and Japanese.
Mhm.
Like Kaki references have proliferated very quickly. So, yeah, maybe Kaki is actually someone who has the potential to go on and become a very, very prominent idol in general, not just in Nogizaka. I
Mm.
think she has got that potential.
Mm. Yeah. Since you brought up Sashi, you remind me that I always wanted to see Matsuen put in production role where she's in charge of things instead of just like
Yeah,
being in the variety role.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting you bring this up because one of the things AKB do, which I really, really like, is that they do occasionally run stages which are produced by members of the group. So it's not
Mm.
just Sashi that's done this, like various people Murayama Yuri is the only one I can think of off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that, different AKB members have done this. I kind of wonder whether that would be something that would be interesting to see with, like the senior members who are around now, if they kind of
Mhm.
produce, for example, like a part of a concert, so people like um, Ika-chan Manatsu, Mayan, Kaz. If
Mhm.
those kind of members, along with Matson, did that kind of thing, like produced a part of a stage, I think that would be not a stage, a concert. I think that would be really interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you catch the key point about stage that make it popular is that there's a lot of songs that people would like to see different people performing. Maybe, for example, there's this song that's Takahashi Minami's song, but they want to see, I don't know, Mayu perform it. Like, I think that's their appeal of stage, and I think they kind of did that for their summer
Yeah,
tour.
yeah, they did do that. They did do that.
Yeah, but it's not a common thing, right? They only do it during their summer tour, and each member produce one song. That's not a lot. But we have seen the member, if given creative freedom, they can do a lot more. Specifically, Matsun, when she take those songs from other subunit and write her own with diverse areas, and they sing it out, and it's very entertaining. Like she's very creative. She can do this kind of stuff, and it'd be really really fun if she's given more of her own
Yeah,
volition to do this. Yeah.
like Manatsu being like the obvious example, but just I'd like to see what the idol loving members come up with. So you've got Kaz,
Mm.
Canadin as well. I think would give like an interesting take on stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
So
true.
yeah, like I mean, I've never really thought about that much before, but I think you're right. I think that would definitely be a very interesting thing to see.
Hmm. Yeah, and speaking of which, that kind of ties back to their role, right? We mentioned how a lot of these members are less like their own, like it's less about them being their own gen doing their own thing anymore, but more about them being like mentors and their senior members. And this kind of
Yeah,
ties back, right? If they're producing things from the younger member. I think Ikujan did really well when she produced her own Hakumai Sama and bring out the best singer. I'm not sure that she chose them, maybe she did, but there was Kaki, there was Juna, and there was Kuboshi, and those are some of the best singers from their gen, and they did really well. It was really entertaining since they have their own spin on the song, but also it was very impressive to see their good singers from each gen during their singing of this song. So if they do that more, that would be an obvious sample of how they're using their experience and their creativity to help nurture and bring attention to the new gens.
yeah. So, um,
Mhm.
I've actually covered all the points which I had written down for this episode, which I wanted to cover because I wanted to talk about fourth gen, but I feel as though we've talked quite a lot about fourth gen throughout.
Mhm.
Did you have anything you wanted to talk about before we sign off?
Um, Maybe not so much about fourth gen, but maybe third gen a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
I'm I'm a little bit surprised. It's probably going to sound very, very funny if the audience is like listening from the last episode and then here 3 months later, the audience will find me saying that I think fourth gen have kind of surpassed version right now.
Yeah,
Because I'm sure you remember way back, I'm like, yeah, fourth gen, they might end up like second gen, and third gen's too powerful, blah blah blah. I said that, and now I'm a clown. But I find it very amusing to see that it seems like management is kind of going all in on fourth gen, especially if the Senbatsu picture we saw is true. There's Saya, there's Sayaka, there's already the three we um we know that's in Senbatsu right now, and I don't think there was any new version. Heck, Momoko might not be in Senbatsu, and we know Yoda isn't appearing too much these days. She might not be like healthy these days, so that can be helped. But maybe management's not pushing Yoda as much, and if that's the case, then there's definitely been a change of fourth gen, how third gen is doing. Suddenly, fourth gen is taking their taking the most prominent position relative to third gen, which seemed up and coming up until a few months ago.
yeah. So I think there's a few points. The first point is that there's there's third gen members who were in and around the Senbatsu but weren't confirmed members. So we're talking about like Rentan, Ririan to a lesser extent because Ririan felt as though she might cross over in Senbatsu. Tamachan, the same thing. I think we've kind of got to a point where I think that management only seems to be interested in selecting the most popular members of each generation with members of the newest generation thrown in to see how they do in popularity terms, which is
Mm.
is ruthless, but I guess one of the things that really, really worried me when I looked at Nogizaka and then I looked at what happens in AKB is the fact that it took far too long for members in AKB to even be considered for Senbatsu roles. And that's
Mm.
the thing that when I look at AKB, I feel has dragged it down really, really badly in the last couple of years. So while I think that I kind of feel as though, there's obviously been a lot of wasted talent in second gen, and there's talent in
Mm-hmm.
third gen, which I feel might be wasted if things carry on the way they are. I feel that
Mm-hmm.
that's less of a problem for the group than fear of trusting new members.
That's true. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
I think one of the things that I've got used to is that the members I like will never get the chances they deserve, in general.
Mm,
I'm not saying the
mm-hmm,
members I like specifically, but, members that people like, there will always be members who deserved a better chance who never got it. But
mm-hmm,
I think that that's still not quite as bad as just being unable to trust members because they haven't been around for a long time.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think you're right in that, like, third gen, they kind of shuffle people through, and now they're like, we're going to shuffle the new fourth gen through, and we're keeping the popular third gen, but the third gen members that are not quite there, we're going to stop shopping them in and start shopping in the new fourth gen, which like you said, it's not the nicest thing, but it makes sense from the perspective of managing the group.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the one thing we were really, really worried about the last time we spoke is, as you said, are fourth gen actually going to be used by management or not? And it feels as though they very much are. So that was one thing which I was very worried about, which hasn't come to pass.
Hmm. Yeah, I think management at least learned to not let there be a second gen, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah, just members who
like
they let, like they let them be in the group, but they're not doing anything with them for a significant period of time.
yeah, it doesn't seem like that's happening anymore, and even the less popular and less pushed member, they still get things to do, like not as much as we would like, but there's stuff they seem content in general.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, it does also feel as though, I think from the perspective of third gen, there is the possibility to become an important member of the group if you can get popular enough.
Mm. Hmm.
Which is something.
Yeah, and a lot of members.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of members still pretty young too, so there's opportunity coming. Like there can be opportunity that come up in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel as though, for example, like Rentan still has, like the years available to her to become something like Asuka is now.
Mm. That's true. I'm a little bit surprised at how fast Ayame surpassed her though. Like just pure popularity rise.
Yeah.
Mm. Like I think Ayame could become her second Asuka too if things work out for her.
Yeah. Because Ayame is what, 15 now?
Yeah, they're both 15, like
Yeah.
Ayame and Rentan. Hmm. It's interesting though. They're like angel and demons.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Ayame is an honor student, and Rentan is a Yankee, isn't she? Rentan is a Yankee from a TV drama.
Yeah, you can tell, like, just look at Nogichu and look at her reactions, like it's very very Kusaraki.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm ever going to stop being entertained by her.
I agree. Yeah.
So, I think that is everything now.
Mhm.
But if you've listened to the end of the show, thank you for listening to us, and we're glad that we were having problems finding specific things we wanted to talk about, and this time we have found something specific we wanted to talk about. So, we're both quite pleased to be able to put an episode together for the first time in a while.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think. Mhm.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I just said it's been a while, so it's definitely good to be able to talk things through. A lot have happened, and it's good to be able to talk about development. And like I said a little bit earlier, there's been a change in fortune. I think that's very interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's goodbye from me, John.
And for me, Rusty.